Welcome to What's Really Happening in Southern Utah. I'm McKennan, your host. In studio today, we have some really special people that go out into this community and handle things that aren't necessarily always talked about. It's incredible the amount of people that they have involved and they have access to with the Canyon Creek services. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. And you're the new executive director of this.
I am.
How fun. So tell us, today we're going to kind of talk about your why, what types of people you serve in this area, and why we kind of need to get more involved as a community and making sure that we're protecting what you protect most.
Absolutely.
So tell us your big why.
Oh, my big why is really big, and it's a few different things. But I am a survivor of abuse myself, and so I have a really personal stake in the mission of our organization to make sure that our communities are free of domestic violence and sexual assault. And so for me, that's really what's kind of anchored me to the work that we do. But what's kept me here long term is seeing the community that we have and how invested they are in making sure that this stuff isn't happening and that we're functioning in a way that we're responding and we're trying to get it to stop. And so I'm from originally Davis County, and I moved here 11 years ago, got married, started a family, did all the things, and I don't know that I'll ever leave because there's just something magical about Southern Utah, and specifically here in Cedar City. And so I have really just loved being a part of this organization, and I'm just really excited to kind of take on this new role and keep going.
And that's really exciting. I'm sorry that you are a survivor of abuse, but it's one of those things that happens more oftentimes than not. And I believe, now correct me, I believe 1 in every 3 women has experienced some type of abuse in an area. Is that correct?
It is. It's 1 in 3 women have experienced some kind of abuse within their lifetime. And the hard statistic is that in Utah, that number is actually higher. We have a higher rate of abuse in Utah than we do in other parts of the country. And another statistic people don't talk about is that 1 in 7 men specifically experience sexual abuse. And so we have a huge need here in our area, here in Utah, to make sure that we have places that address this kind of abuse so that we can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
And also with us today is Rianne,
yes,
the Director of Development for Canyon Creek Services. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
So as Kate just shared her big why, what's your big why and why do you stay involved?
Well, I too have experienced intimate partner abuse with my practice marriage, is what I call it, my previous marriage.
Okay.
And so, but I have a passion for helping and empowering people, and I've worked in nonprofit work and everything before, and realized very quickly that I get a little too passionate about certain things, and so I decided I'm going to use my skill set to raise money so that they can get the support they need, and I don't have to know about the abusers because I can't condone violence, and if I worked with the survivors directly, I would want to hurt the people that hurt them, kind of thing. So
The mama bears coming out in you.
I am a very mama bear type personality, so I really like to focus on making sure that we have the resources we need to give the best support possible to these survivors because they deserve it. I mean, some of the things that they've gone through is just kind of heart-wrenching, and so for me, doing the development work and going out and talking to people and sharing that passion is something that is so important, and it's so necessary. So
Thank
that's
you.
what I love to do.
And if you've met Rianne in the community, you know exactly who you're dealing with, and that she is so good at her job. So we're really lucky to have her.
No, and what's really incredible about Iron County specifically is one of the 3 counties you guys serve. You serve Beaver and Garfield County as well, correct?
We do.
So it's kind of a large area that you guys serve, and to have the administrative offices housed here is vital to the community. And then having Rianne go out into the different communities and make sure that all the business owners and all the community members are supporting those programs. Coming up next is how to get involved and where you can really dive down deep into this program. Welcome back to What's Really Happening in Southern Utah with Canyon Creek Services. This is how to get involved and why we need to be getting involved. in such a specific program for our area. This program serves Iron County, Garfield County, and Beaver County areas of southern Utah. Tell us what's going on. How do we get involved? Where do we need the money?
So Canyon Creek Services receives a lot of community support, and that is fantastic. But unfortunately, we still have a shortfall that we're going to be experiencing from our federal funding sources. We receive funding from VOCA and VAWA. And VAWA is it VAWA? No. VOCA is reparation dollars from criminal. So it's not tax dollars. People think we're heavily funded with tax dollars, and that's not necessarily the case. Our largest funding source is VOCA, which is reparations, but we're seeing a funding cut coming up this next year. And so we really need the community support to kind of help us bridge that gap so that we're able to continue the level of services that we're providing, especially with the need, because we still have a need, unfortunately, for these services. And so people can get involved very easily. The easiest way is to go online at canyoncreekservices.org and click donate, and you can donate. You can set up a simple recurring monthly donation, like $25 to $35 on a recurring basis could actually help us bridge that gap. If we had at least 534, I think is the number.
534.
534 people giving at least $35 a month.
Okay.
Would actually help us bridge that gap.
How incredible. And we've gone through some daily statistics with other shelters in the area or other services in the area. What's the dollar figure per survivor that you would need on a daily basis to make sure that your services are there?
So that varies because the services vary quite a bit. But when we've broken down the numbers, on average it costs us about $24.50. I'm like trying to remember. It costs us about $2,450 on average to serve one client. And we serve roughly 750 plus clients a year. That's kind of been our average over the last 3 years. So some years are more, some years are less, but that's the cost.
So about 2.5 people a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that we could have half people in here, right? But around 2.5 people per day are coming and needing your services. Kate, walk us through your services. What services do you guys offer, and how can we see, or help the victims, survivors where we can?
Yeah, this is an important thing because I think people are familiar with Canyon Creek and the community as a shelter because we've been here since the early 90s, and we were brought by this wonderful group of humans that knocked on doors to raise money to build this shelter. And our shelter is still in operation today. But Rianne mentioned we serve about 750, sometimes 850 people per year, but only 200 of those go through our shelter. And just another statistic on the money there, it costs about $61 per day for a client staying in our shelter. And we have, usually we're at a max, and that's 28 people in our shelter at one time.
That cost has actually probably gone up with inflation currently.
Yes,
because we're
food.
struggling.
Yes, food is super expensive. So let me give you a breakdown of the services in a way that I think will flow a little bit easier. So when a survivor needs help, they can access us through a variety of ways. They can call our 24-hour hotline. They can walk into our survivor services offices. It's right behind Pork Bellies, right next to Lionsgate Recovery, the Family Support Center. Or they can, contact us via website. Some of the survivors, we get referrals from law enforcement. They'll call with the survivor at the scene of a crime. We'll have doctors and therapists that will call with people in their offices that need help, and we respond to those locations to be able to kind of talk through what we can do and make sure that they're safe. And once we have somebody that has, initiated services in some way, it is all self-disclosed. So we don't require them to have proof that something has happened to them because, we start by believing survivors that that's what's happened to them.
Right.
Which is so important to not be turned away. And in a lot of these situations, people don't believe what's happening to them. And so once they're in services, once they've, hit an entry point, then they're assigned a victim advocate, and that person kind of stays with them through services as long as is needed, helps them create a service plan. We can assist with housing, getting them connected to benefits while they get on their feet, maybe healthcare benefits, sometimes food stamps or medical benefits. We also do protective orders, stalking injunctions, child protective orders. We assist with court advocacy and legal advocacy, making sure we can go and sit with people in those hearings and in those court cases to provide support. We can give them information about what that looks like, what to expect, and what's coming next. If you've never been in a courtroom during a criminal case, it is not an easy thing to navigate.
Especially when you're facing somebody who's caused you harm.
Right. And so our advocates are available and ready to work with these survivors all the way through, whatever they need. And I just listed a few different services, but really our services center around what does this person need to be able to be safe and to get stable. So it could be reconnecting them with family that they've been isolated from because their perpetrator hasn't allowed communication. It may be transporting them across the country to a safe family member. It might be, housing them here in Cedar and getting them a new security system to make sure that they're safe from their perpetrator. So there's so many things we can do. And if you have a need and you're just not sure if we can help you, please call us, because there are a lot of things that we do that may be a one-time thing because the situation is special. So.
Well, and one thing I want to highlight too is not only do you serve Iron Beaver and Garfield County, we're on the I-15 corridor. You can have transporting people coming through here, and you're kind of just a home base in these counties where you can serve really anybody who comes through your doors, regardless of where they're from. And that's a huge point to hit on, because if we see, as community members, if we see people in those situations, we know that the Canyon Creek Services is there to help them regardless of where they're from. Mm-hmm. And if we see people in need of those services or in those types of situations, we can go back and make sure that they're getting the support, or at least advocating that there's support here in those subtle ways that I'm sure you guys have educational systems on through your website and or through meeting with you guys.
Right. We have, and I'm glad you mentioned the I-15, because we call it the trafficking corridor, because we have lots of human trafficking that happens along I-15 from Vegas, California, up through Mexico. And so we do see survivors that have been sex trafficked, that we are the closest service provider on their journey. Or we've had people who have gotten away from their perpetrators at Love's. We've had people walk here from various places and on I-15, and it's important that people know that we're there.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on what's really happening in Southern Utah. This information is crucial and should be published and getting out to the community as often as necessary. Thank you for doing the hard work and going out there and raising those funding dollars. It's very important, and it's a vital service to this area and surrounding areas. Thank you guys so much for joining us on what's happening with Southern Utah. This is your host, McKennan Hansen.